Well, hello again, and welcome to the Collab 365 Global Conference. This presentation is from Crow Canyon Systems about powering up SharePoint and Office 365 to solve real business problems. Many people have Office 365 and SharePoint, and they're looking to build solutions or acquire solutions that run on them to help optimize their businesses and help run their organizations more smoothly. My name is Scott Restivo. I'm CEO and President of Crow Canyon Systems. There's some contact information there, and during this presentation or after, I'd be very glad to talk to you by email, by phone. Also can read our blog. There's Twitter, all kinds of ways to contact us and find out what Crow Canyon is up to and what we can do to help out your organization. Crow Canyon Systems was founded in 1999, so nearly 20 years ago almost now. We're based in Benicia, California in the Bay Area, and we've been developing applications for businesses for all during that time. We started out in the Outlook world, the Outlook public folders, doing Outlook help desk. That grew to thousands and thousands of installations all around the world. And then about 10 years ago, we transitioned over to SharePoint and Office 365, and now are one of the leading providers of applications on those platforms. We do both out-of-the-box applications. We also provide custom development services. Now, what I'll cover today are challenges in application development, what SharePoint provides out of the box to meet those challenges, what Crow Canyon's approach is, the 3 pillars as we call it, and the solutions and possible ways you can go about powering up SharePoint and Office 365. So let's just jump right into some common business challenges that you face. Well, the real question comes, why are you looking for an application? What is the purpose? Or is it an organizational challenge? An organization has decided that the CEO wants to move, or the old legacy systems aren't working out. We want to move to the cloud. Other systems are having problems with user adoption. The company's growing, the company's splitting or merging, regulatory and compliance requirements. There's all kinds of reasons that you might want to adopt a new application, a new platform. You might already have SharePoint in place and thinking how it can be used in a better manner. It may be that there's old legacy programs that are not working out anymore, or whatever, a number of different reasons to go build applications and start to work towards making SharePoint or Office 365 the platform of choice. Now, with applications that currently exist, there's a number of challenges with those also. A lot of people are, at least a lot of people we speak with, are on emails and spreadsheets looking to do the kind of functions that are necessary in a help desk or customer support or request management system. Well, there's problems with emails and spreadsheets. One of the problems is that there's limited collaboration opportunities. A lot of times the emails land in the inbox, and that's the ticket. That's not even a ticket, it's just an email, and who has it, who's working on it, what's the status. It gets lost, and when it goes below what they call the horizon, where you don't see it any longer in your inbox, it can easily be forgotten. Tracking and reporting, if there's any, is very difficult. Accountability, who's doing what when, and it can only grow so big, and only so many people can allow access to that. It works in very limited situations, and the same with spreadsheets, because spreadsheets have the same limitations similar to email, in that there's only so much can be done, only so much collaboration, growth, scalability, and tracking that can go on with those. Then moving down, there's the ad hoc and homegrown kind of applications that might be reaching the end of their life cycle here, and that's because when applications are developed in-house or on a one-off basis, we need this, let's go develop it, they're very developer dependent. If that person who did it, the development, moves on to another job or leaves the company, has other projects he or she is working on, then what happens is there's not ability to support it. There's issues with upgrading. What if you change platform, SharePoint 2010 to 2013 to 2016, or move to Office 365? All kinds of problems. Even if it is a SharePoint application, there could be all kinds of issues with upgrading, getting from one platform to another, because it's dependent on what the developer put together. There is no supporting organization. In other words, there's no supporting organization as when you buy it from a vendor. Legacy systems are outdated, usually outdated technology. I mean, the classic is the mainframe, but many people are off that. But even other client server type systems, they're not web-based, they're not cloud friendly, they're not responsive. and a lot of times the technology is outdated, maybe the support is discontinued, and there's just no place for it to go with those. And then enterprise software, sort of a legacy type system, but let's just look at it as a separate category here. Usually very expensive, overkill in terms of features, and we hear stories quite often where people call and say, "Well, I have this large, capable program, but I can't get it to do this one thing because the vendor will not customize it. It's not customizable. It's only useful in the one kind of limited area of functionality, and if you want to do more than that, then you're out of luck." Now, also what happens, a lot of these are cloud-based, and they're running in multi-tenant platforms, and they cannot switch or move or create some special case for you, and you have to use what's standard out of the box, out of the cloud, out of the box, out of the cloud, whatever program, and that's it. So now that we've talked a little bit about some of the organizational challenges and the application challenges of moving from a legacy or old application or homegrown or using limited emails and spreadsheets, whatever, to over to SharePoint and Office 365. Well, Office 365 and SharePoint are very powerful and very capable platforms, but there's only so much you get out of the box. OOTB, out of the box. What can you expect of SharePoint and Office 365? Well, out of the box, you get certain good amount of functionality with site collections, lists, libraries, permissions, view filters, things like that you can kind of construct a basic application, maybe using a task list and try and monkeying around with the workflows and things like that. But really, in reality, it's missing a lot of other capabilities. What about forms, workflows, columns, custom columns such as cascaded lookups, discussion columns, line of business, associated item, email synchronization, database integration with other maybe membership or financial or ERP or CRM type systems? What about reporting? How are you going to get decent reporting out of the SharePoint system, SharePoint or Office 365 system? So that's the area a lot of people, or the barrier a lot of people run into here is we have SharePoint. We're trying to do what we can with it. Maybe you buy a few web parts. Maybe you monkey around with SharePoint Designer. Maybe you try, well, it used to be try InfoPath forms, things like that, and try and put together an application. But it really has limits as to what it can do out of the box and how do you go forward and how do you really power it up. And that's part of what we'll discuss in this webinar going forward. So let's look at some of the tools that come with SharePoint. There's workflows, SharePoint Designer, InfoPath Forms, Visual Studio. They all have pros and cons, I guess you could say. Workflows, Designer, InfoPath Forms are going out. Visual Studio takes a lot of development talent to get to the point where it's useful. So let's look at some of those pros and cons here that was developed by a consultant company here, and it says pros, cons. And here's a few of things going on. Like I said, out of the box SharePoint workflows, they seem easy to implement, but there's very limited configuration. SharePoint Designer, yeah, they can basic workflows, but they're difficult to deploy to multiple environments. In other words, you build it for that one site, and the ability to pass it over to other sites and deploy it is difficult. And then there's the Visual Studio issues with you really need to be a programmer, and then there's a whole world of programming that involves SharePoint. SharePoint, we do it all day long here. We well know we use Visual Studio to develop our web parts, our apps here at Crow Canyon. So we well know that it takes trained, and we have a team dedicated just to that, building it. It's not something where the casual non-programmer is going to walk in and start using Visual Studio to do these kind of things. So let's look at the next possibilities. This is Crow Canyon's approach. Okay. Now, what we've been doing application development, like I said earlier, for nearly 20 years. So over time, we kind of developed a sort of strategy or areas that applications need to have, considerations to make it useful, to make it function well, run smoothly, to have the kind of reporting you need out of it. So here's what we call the three pillars of application design. The three pillars of application design in the Crow Canyon world is UI UX, user adoption, user engagement, user interface, user experience. How is the program interfacing and given flexibility and capabilities to the end user? The second kind of middle, probably the bulk of it, of any application, is the workflow and business processes. These are the way the ticket or request, incident, problem, question, complaint, whatever it is that's generated from the end user is taken through its path to completion. There has to be some processes and workflows, and workflow in this case does not necessarily mean SharePoint workflow. It means just a flow of order. Does it of the ticket through the system? Does it need approvals? Does it need to be branched out into multiple tasks? Does it need to go to other people? Does it need to go into kind of a holding queue while other tasks are completed? Does it need other processes involved in order to bring it to completion? What is the path to resolution? If it's an incident, is it simply fixing it that solves the problem? Or is there a request that needs to be driven through a certain defined process? I call that forms based, process driven, meaning that a form comes in that is very specific information on it, and then the process has to be completed, such as a request for leave or a request for new hardware, a new hire request, for example. Those kind of requests go through a very particular process that has to go from A to B to C to completion. Whereas incidents is a little bit different. They can be completed, say a printer's broken. As soon as you fix the printer, it's done. The process is simply fix it and then resolve it that way. But there isn't like a defined process and order it goes through. So those two kinds of things, those different kinds of processes, the complexity of that are in the middle sector. And the last sector, a last pillar here is reporting. Reporting needs to be robust, capable. It needs to have real-time, immediate reporting as well as historical reporting and trends so that it can go through the once the tickets or questions or problems or complaints are resolved, there is a reporting at the end that can help with continual service improvement. So let's look at each of these areas individually, and then we'll explore them, each of the three pillars one at a time. So the UI UX, workflow and business processes, and reporting. So we'll start with UI UX. Now, user adoption has always been something of an issue in SharePoint. As you can see on this chart, the dark blue area says 11% felt like of this survey felt like they had successfully adopted and introduced SharePoint application into their environment. It's interesting to explore this more. What are the problems? What are the issues? Why is user adoption low? We even see people saying things like, "Shh, don't tell anybody it's SharePoint." Let's make it so people don't even know it's SharePoint, which is kind of an interesting comment on SharePoint and interface. If it's you don't even want the people to know, you want to hide it behind certain web portals or forums or whatever. So that's kind of interesting, because ultimately what really matters here is that the users use it. In some sense, they don't really care what's behind it. It's like if I go to my banking system online, do I really care what's running behind it in terms of what database and what form of web programming they use? All I want to do is have it function. And whether, we in the SharePoint world are sort of enamored with SharePoint and Office 365 and all its capabilities. And I don't know about how much you guys are, but here at Crow Canyon, that's what we do night and day. So we're all embedded and imbued with the SharePoint world. But the end users aren't in that position. The end users are more like, I just want to use it. I want, to know what button to push, what information to fill out. Does SharePoint really matter to them? I don't think so in most cases. So we have, again, the 11% success rate, and of course you want that much higher. You want to go from this, where there's frustration, to a nice, smooth operation. Now, how do you do that? Well, let's look at some of the possibilities inside of SharePoint. Why is UI UX important? Well, it seems like an obvious question. But let's explore it a little. You want to drive user adoption and engage users. If they don't use it, what good is your program? What good is it? It could be the best, most technically excellent program there is, but if no one's using it, what good is it? It doesn't have any use to the organization. So if we look at this, what drives user adoption? Well, ease of use, simplicity, information at the fingertips, attractive visual elements. I would even add other ones such as a lack of clutter, a clarity of what steps to take, what needs to be filled in. Only asking the fields or fields on the form, only asking for the information that you want or that is required. Pulling information from other places so the user doesn't have to re-enter it, such as from Active Directory or other databases. Things like that help drive user adoption. So now at the actual practical level of how to do that, well, that's what the bottom part of this slide is about. power up user adoption, you want to do things like forms manager, so that it isn't the standard SharePoint form, but it's a form that has tabbing, a form that has a nicer look, a form that has flexibility. Dynamic forms means that when a selection is made, perhaps in a drop list, other areas to fill out, other columns show up, or other tabs show up, that there's a certain dynamicness that are responsive to the input. Now, I don't mean responsive design like mobile, though that's very important too, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I mean the ticket is responsive to the input of the user to say it's an incident. Say it's an incident and it's a printer one. Well, then you might want to know certain information. If it's a question from a customer about such and such product, well, then maybe you want to know the serial number and the model or when purchased. So there's all kinds of things that you can do to make it dynamic and more appropriate to the request and type of inquiry. It usually involves asking a few, or even just one initial question, initial selection that then drives the rest of the form to apply to that particular type of request or need for information. Now, another area that also drives up user adoption are custom columns, such as cascaded lookups, color indicators, associated items, things like that, that add more flexibility to than the standard out-of-the-box SharePoint columns. Portals, portals is a whole world in itself. This whole idea of digital workspace and kind of a intranet that is more geared to an employee service center. It's the kind of things we do here at the Crow Canyon, and make up portals that allow the user or customer, the employee or customer, to have a place of interface and interaction with the system that isn't SharePoint looking at all. It's just really a web page. We'll look some of that later. Configurable workspaces is meant more for the back end staff workspace. Staff workspace would need staff members and managers and things like that. They want to be able to arrange the SharePoint items, the web parts, the way they want. Dashboards is very important. It's kind of a version of reporting. So you have this dashboard of dials and numbers and counts, and that give you critical information you need right then and there. One thing that helps a lot is the branding looks like the corporate look and feel, so it sort of feels like they're part of the same organization and haven't switched to a whole different company. You can go quite a ways with that in SharePoint. It does take some CSS skills and other skills to get there, but it's possible. To get there and change the logo, put a different colors on, maybe the fonts, things like that make it more feel like your company. And responsive design is all related to mobile, so that there is not just limited to the desktop, but also to tablets and smartphones. The same capability of either entering in a ticket, request, problem, question, whatever, and also for the staff to work on those and resolve them. So that's why UI UX is important, is have this user engagement both from the end user to the staff members, and incorporating these different elements to make that happen. So here's a simple basic tab form UI where you have different tabs. These tabs, this is part of our forms manager tool, one particular color scheme, one particular way of doing it. But I'll just mention that what happens is that there are different tabs. The tabs can be arranged in the configuration tool to whatever number of tabs and names you want, and whatever columns you want on the tab are determined in that tool. It's also dynamic. It also can be permission, so that certain people have rights to certain tabs or even certain columns on the tab. So it makes a very good way to control what is displayed to which users and what other columns or tabs they'll see when they make certain selections. So this is getting beyond the basic form, the SharePoint form, the list form. You got this tabbing and the functionality that the tabbing brings along. But another whole concept is to go to the portals. Now, portal can be designed any way. This is a very colorful, let's just say very colorful, give it that. And it has a picture behind it. The picture can be changed. It has different buttons that you can click. And all this can be arranged in many, many different ways that you want appropriate. Now, this is where you might sit down with the users, see what they have already. You may say, what do you need in your functionality? I mean, it's very important to engage the groups that are going to use the program and say, what is the way for this flow of your entry, your engagement with it going to work? Do you just want to submit tickets? Do you want to view your tickets? Do you want to search knowledge? What other, do you need notifications? What information you need? FAQs, knowledge base, access to other information, corporate information. What are the quick and easy, common requests you want to put in? common questions. Perhaps when you click one of these, it would actually pop up some knowledge base articles or FAQs saying, hey, have you considered this? Have you looked at that before you submit a ticket and ask this question? What the bottom line, the user wants the resolution. They want some kind of question answered or problem fixed or whatever. Now we're looking more at the tech staff side of things, and this is from another program, not Crow Canyon, but it shows that there's different ways to display data in different graphs and charts and tools, web parts you might say, that help display it so that it becomes more functional. Now this is not an end user interface. This is a tech and staff portal interface, which can be more technical. I mean, most people who are working on the tickets, IT help desk tickets anyway, or asset management, equipment management, are used to this more technical. If you are in an HR or customer support or marketing materials or office supply, administrative, finance kind of, you might want to stick with something that's a bit more somewhere between this tech staff portal and the user simplicity user portal. It really depends. You have to talk to your users, both the end users and the staff, and see what they're comfortable with and how technically savvy they are with this and how much they want to participate or engage in this way. As IT help desk people, I think people think these kind of interfaces are pretty cool because they have tiles and dials and all kinds of interface and makes very active in engagement. Now the other, of course, is the mobile responsive design. That's very important, especially in sales or field service, equipment repair, asset management, IT help desk, employee service center. You want to make mobile responsive designs central part of your design of the UI UX so that it's available on tablets or smartphones, and that's very important to do. Later versions of SharePoint Office 365 are moving more in that direction. The earlier versions, it was very kind of hard to get a good looking mobile design on a smartphone using the standard SharePoint. You had to use special tools that would do that. More and more it's moving into cloud first, mobile first, as Microsoft puts it, is what's going forward there. Okay, so now let's go into workflows and business processes. Why are they important? Well, of course, they automate day-to-day tasks. We want to be more productive, more efficient. We want our staff to answer questions more easily, and essentially to get to the point of employee and customer satisfaction. We also want visibility into where the task or question or problem is, who's working on it, is it stuck in approvals, accountability. So like, where did it get stuck, who's working on it, what needs to be done. I want full life cycle tracking from beginning to end. This is where the email and spreadsheets and some of those legacy applications don't hold up. This full life cycle communication, so that there's email and other communications abilities built into the application, so that everybody who needs to be informed can be informed. You don't want to inform everybody on everything. End users just want status and a few notes, whereas the tech might want to know every detail of the work log. Okay, to deploy robust workflows and business processes, look for workflow manager type tool, routing capabilities, alerting and notifications. Maybe service level agreements are important. That always keeps it moving along. Automatic assignment, escalation if things have not been taken care of after a certain amount of time. Maybe you have to create return tickets and tasks. That's important for maintenance. Subtasks and linked items that are related to each ticket may have, or especially like new hires or hardware setups and things like that, might require sub-tickets that have to be done before the main one's done. Printing, you want to be able to print out work orders, lists of tickets. Email synchronization is very important. Database integration can be optional, but often that is part of it. Here are some workflow configuration options that are in our application administration of the Crow Canyon products. So you see there's notifications, categorization, recurrence, service level agreements, approvers, all these possibilities and ways to configure the different processes. So that's one thing with workflows in an application. They have to be very configurable, whether using workflow in the broader sense of workflow, alerting, notification, escalation, service level agreements, processes. All that has to be very configurable so that you can make it do what you need it to do. Here's an example of a service level agreement. Things are set up based on certain kinds of criteria on the tickets. Certain service level agreements are kicked off, such as due dates. Approver, who approves what, based on what level. It could be single level, multi-level, all kinds of ways to enact approver processes. We have a whole bunch of apps in our Office 365 that do these kind of things. I won't delve into that too much. Here's a workflow manager, email sync. These are parts of, which should be part of any workflow and any application to manage the workflows and business processes. So jumping right along into reporting and analytics, this is again the third pillar here. the reporting and analytics. So just to summarize, we went over UI UX, we went over workflows and business processes and some of the ways that can be done, and now we're looking at reporting and analytics. Well, reporting and analytics, the third pillar, is very important, and you shouldn't. This is something that should not be ignored or played down. It's very important to answer these key questions. Are we meeting our goals? Is the staff performing optimally? How's the customer service looking? Is the application succeeding in some ways? Is one way to put it. What is preventing better performance? How can we improve? Because you'll be always looking at a continuous cycle of improvement here. So to answer these kind of questions, you want to have a reporting tool, a report center, dashboards, tiles and dials, data integration, whatever it takes to get that information into a place that gives you actionable information that says so many, trends or roadblocks or things like that are obvious. And the reason is you want to find the root causes and fix them. It could be hardware, some hardware problem, some software problem needs upgrading, some procedural problem that needs to be fixed or it isn't quite a smooth process. It could be people, like they aren't trained properly. And the idea is to get a continuous cycle of improvement so that the help desk or the ticketing system or the application or the asset management or equipment or customer support, whatever application it is, even new hires or even ordering materials, security access requests, it really doesn't matter what the application actually is, because what you want to do is have this continuous cycle of improvement that you can look back and say, what can we have done better? How can we improve our processes? How can we make it so there's fewer incidents? Or how can we have more speedy response to customers? What information do we need to present? Or do they need training? The employees need training. Is there some procedural problem, some process that is clunky or it can be revised or even just tweaked a bit sometimes makes a big difference. Is it hardware or software that's causing an issue? Well, once you find those things out, you can take the steps to fix it. And hopefully that will result in a continual cycle of improvement so that things improve and the customer service gets better and better. Now, here's in our IT help desk an example of a report center. You can create charts and graphs and tables, whatever, many different styles, and then have it available for reporting. So you can just click a button and get a report. Here's an Office 365, a report that's showing, say, assets by department, open tickets by staff. See, different kinds of ways of displaying this information. And then you can put these together into kind of a dashboard type web page and then see things visually quite easily and give you actionable items. Either this could be immediate dashboard, what's happening in real time, or it could be historical, looking back over the past month or year or whatever time period is appropriate. You can put it into tables. Now when you click these, for instance, if you click one of these items here, like calendar or whatever, you would drill down into see those 7 calendar items. So drill down is important. Also in your reporting, you want to have ability to export to Excel or PDF or email it or print out a report so you can share it with the important and appropriate people. Also have tiles and dials and dashboards like that, another style, so that you can see immediately how many are overdue, how many are open, how many are unassigned, what kind of tasks are involved. Just get this information up front and center as a core part of the application. We think UI is important, we think workflow is important, and of course they are, but the reporting is also so that you have this kind of information right there. So let's take a look at a little deeper at this and kind of summarize what I've been talking about. 3 pillars of application design. User interface UX. Very important for user adoption, engagement. You want to know what the users want, how they're going to use it. You have to present your forms and your portals or whatever in ways that are going to engage the users, and maybe even with don't even tell them it's SharePoint kind of model, I don't know, or make it so that even if it is SharePoint, it's very friendly and useful through these different things, whether you use a forms tool, make dynamic, custom columns, all these things we talked about earlier that help power up the UI and UX of SharePoint and Office 365. And it's the same workflow and business processes. The workflow manager, routing, alerts, service level agreements, all these things and all the others can be built into the application with the right tools. This is important so that the users enter in information, then it's carried through in a way that's the most efficient, automated as possible. Automatic approvals, routing, service level agreements, alerting to keep people aware of something's going overdue, or just even every time a ticket changes. Integration with databases, email, all kinds of ways that this can work to make it a really powerful application. And then reporting with report centers and dashboards and data integration tools like SQL Server Reporting Services, SSRS, things like that that can help give you the information for continuous service improvement. Now, what we've been saying all along is that there are out of the box SharePoint, but that doesn't have these kind of tools and capabilities. So how do you power up SharePoint and Office 365, taking into consideration the three pillars of application design that we just covered? Well, there are several options that we see. Let's take a look at them. One is building your own using existing components and platforms. Another is third-party applications, and another is custom development projects. Let's take a close look at each one of those. Building your own using components and platforms. These are using existing components or existing platforms or native SharePoint and Office 365 capabilities to build your application. They are the components put together to make the application perform the functionality you want. There's apps available in the App Store, the Office Store. Actually, they're called add-ins now, or directly from vendors. There's web parts primarily for the on-premises SharePoint, also available from multiple vendors. There's platforms like Nintex and K2 and others that have usually forms designer and workflow managers, workflow designers in them that you can use to build applications, and of course the SharePoint and Office 365 capabilities like lists, libraries, workflows, etc., including also Visual Studio, where you can code things right from scratch. So a number of ways to build your own. You can take these pieces, put them together, and try to make applications out of them. They can work. It depends, but there's some pros and cons. You need to know the tools and how to use them. You need to know what the app does, what the web part does. Find the app, find the web part in the first place, and then how to use its functionality in order to perform whatever you want it to do inside your application. That is a matter of learning the platform, learning the web part, learning the apps. But more important than that is you need to know how to design and build an application in the first place. An application has many components. We talked about the three pillars earlier. There's certain what functionality it's going to perform, what users it's going to address, who's going to use it, how they're going to engage with it, and how these apps, web parts, and platforms can be used to build that kind of functionality successfully. There's also costs and times and fees, the fees being the cost of the web parts, platforms, or apps. Time being the amount of time it takes to build up, learn, and implement the application, then test it out, and give some QA, some feedback, some user acceptance testing, whatever methodology you want to use. But it does take time to develop the application, put it into trial use, and then go through some more changes, put it into production use, etc. That's all a matter of time, and time is money, so there's cost involved. Often it requires hiring a consultant or developer, such as a Nintex consultant or somebody who knows how to put together these applications. Might have to require some custom coding. Who knows? And then the support becomes an issue when that person or group who did the original application development moves on either to other projects or outside the company, and then you're left with this application. And we see that a lot with legacy applications where they were developed, legacy and ad hoc applications were developed in-house, and then the people who did development are moved on or left the company or whatever, and people are stuck with that application and how to upgrade it, maintain it, support it as time moves on, and the versions of SharePoint and Office 365 change and evolve. So those are some of the pros and cons of build your own. Another option is third-party applications. Now, we at Crow Canyon do this, so we're obviously in favor of it. We provide applications that meet core business needs as well as we do custom projects, and we see the value in taking this approach. The applications are fully supported, there's regular upgrades, they're QA and tested, they're quick to implement because they already exist, they've been battle hardened, mature, and that they've been used at multiple locations. There's been bug fixes and feedback that's been incorporated into the application, and there's a lot of configurability without coding built in using utilities that are in the application to begin with. Oh, of course, there's some concerns and issues. Are you buying it from a reliable known vendor? What are the support and maintenance fees ongoing? Well, of course, the license fee also, but the support and maintenance fees. Is there a suitable application out there that meets your needs? There may be some specialized situation where there is no third party. Now, there's quite a range of them. We provide quite a range of core business applications. There's other vendors out there. Some do project management or CRM or HR functions, things like that. Not all those applications fit every need out there. So there may not be a suitable application out there. Then there's time and effort of the trial and selection and putting the application in place. So there's pros and cons, just like build your own. There's pros and cons to this also.
The other option is custom development, usually requiring an outside firm that is skilled in development and project management. You develop the RFP, request for a proposal, you have to go through vendor selection, contract negotiation, check references, etc., etc. And then usually it's appropriate for specialized projects where you can't find a third-party application or it's too complex really to put together a build-your-own scenario to make it work. Now, there's concerns and issues with this also. One is finding a reliable known firm that has references, done similar projects. There's a matter of keeping costs under control, keeping the project on track, and dealing with change management issues. Because inevitably, when you start a project like this, it's going to have other changes, bring up other issues or other possibilities that have to be brought into the project. So managing change is an important component of this also. Now, Crow Canyon has a lot of experience with this also. We've done a number of projects, and I'll go through a few of those later. So let's review the options. You can build your own using components and platforms. You can use third-party applications. You can do custom development. These are all ways to power up SharePoint and Office 365. Now let's look at what Crow Canyon has done with Nitro. We have developed what we call the Nitro application layer. Nitro application layer takes into consideration the three pillars of application design and provides a layer of functionality on top of SharePoint or Office 365 that we use to build our applications, and we use it to do custom development projects, thereby accelerating and keeping these applications and custom development projects up to date and fueled by the power of the Nitro as we continue to evolve this Nitro application layer. Now, there's two versions of this. One is Nitro, Crow Canyon Nitro for Office 365. The point here is it's 100% native Office 365. We did not take the on-premises code and just convert it. We built from scratch this whole platform that has similar functionality to our Nitro for SharePoint on-premises, but is fully 100% native Office 365, no sandbox solution, and it follows all Microsoft standards for Office 365 development. Therefore, it's future-proof in the sense that as my Office 365 evolves, the Nitro platform evolves along with it. We also have the Nitro for SharePoint 2013 or 2016 on-premises, using web parts and apps built for SharePoint on-premises, again following all the standards of SharePoint development. So let's look at some of the applications that come out of this. There is help desk, asset management, customer service, facilities, equipment, tracking, HR requests, and purchasing. These are all core business applications we provide for SharePoint or Office 365, running off our Nitro application layer. There's other Crow Canyon applications include security access requests, onboarding, compliance workflows, document management, marketing materials, membership services. These all incorporate the three pillars of application design using the Nitro application layer as the foundation to do this. Now, we've also done a number of custom projects. These are ones that are not out of the box applications that can be provided as core business. These have special functionality in them, such as a claims management for an insurance provider or check vouchers for a statewide agency that has multiple offices throughout the whole state. A quote generator for a mining company that has mines out in the field and they deal with millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment, have to generate quotes in the field. Guideline documentation for a healthcare company which has to maintain certain guidelines for their providers, their doctors to adhere to and have to be regularly updated by certain government regulations. Critical essential assets for a power plant, a nuclear power plant, that has to obviously maintain their equipment at utmost top capabilities and has to have a regular maintenance and information about each asset kept in very detailed record. Freedom of information requests for various government agencies and laboratory and setup and equipment management. Now, again, all these run on the Nitro layer and incorporate the three pillars: the UI UX, the workflows and processes, and reporting and analytics. So just to show you the kind of range of possibilities that are available in the SharePoint or Office 365 world if the proper application methodologies are taken into consideration and utilized. So there's a lot of possibilities in SharePoint and Office 365, and I hope you're able to take advantage of some of those. I hope you got a lot out of this webinar and continue to enjoy the Collab 365 Global Conference. Stay in touch. Here's our phone number. Here's some information, our email, Twitter, LinkedIn, website. The website has a lot of blog articles and other information to keep you up to date on SharePoint and Office 365 and application development. Again, thank you for joining. I hope this has been useful for you. And please stay in touch and ask us any questions. Send anything to us to help you with your application and usage of SharePoint and Office 365 in your organization. Thank you very much.